Let me see. Yeah, well, okay. It's nice to see my face. Thank you very much for the comment. I hope it's coming. Is it coming through now? Oh, okay. I'm really sorry about this. So I'm actually gonna start from the beginning again. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the comment that it's nice to see my face, but I don't think this is the point of this live session. Uh, anyway, thanks again. All right, let's start from the beginning. Welcome to this live session dedicated to how to conduct a soloist. What we're going to go through tonight are a few key points in what you should do and what you shouldn't do also when you have to conduct a soloist, which can be quite different from your usual conducting of a symphonic piece. So let's start from the beginning and let's get the obvious right of the way. The first thing that you should do when you have a solo piece in your program, you should arrange a private meeting with the soloist, and you should go through parts of the scores, parts of the score, parts of the tricky parts that that you have in the orchestra part when they collide with the soloist, and of cadences. You can read through, you can sing through parts of the score, you can play through, you can, if you wish, and take care and have a good idea of what the soloist idea is, and try to come to a consensus if you have different ideas on specific spots. You should really be aware of the fact that most of the time, as a conductor, you are at the service of the soloist, because the soloist most of the time has, of course, the biggest part in the concert. So you have to check for the soloist's needs. You have to check if they need an extra breath here and there. You have to check if they have a difficult shift on the strings. It's violins or violas or cello, whatever. You have to check when there are cascades of notes in a virtuoso part, if it's necessary for them to have a little more time, a little more loose time. You have to check for rubati, of course, because those need to be really carefully taken care of. On top of everything, before you get even to the first meeting or to the first rehearsal, you should know every single note or word that the soloist plays or sings. It goes for the singers as well. On the singers, it's actually, this takes a total not totally, but it can be quite different in many ways, so we'll do a separate live session on how to accompany singers. Anyway, back to the soloist. This is the most important thing. You need to know everything that the soloist plays. This is because at some point you will run into problems. Problems always happen when you're on stage. Maybe not at every concert, hopefully not at every concert, but sooner or later in your career you're going to find yourself facing a problem on stage. We'll go through a few of these things later in the session, but the key to solve these things is for you to know exactly everything that the soloist plays. So let's move on to one other aspect of this: balance and rests. First of all, balance. Balance is, technically speaking, the easiest part, especially if you have an assistant that can sit in the hall. Of course, it goes without saying, but the soloist must be heard. So if the orchestra is too loud, then you have to keep it softer. That's just a little part of the balance. The biggest part of the balance is when you have a concerto that integrates and interlaces a lot the parts between the soloist and the orchestra. Like for instance in Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto, where there's a lot of parts where the piano is not simply a soloist, but is part of the orchestra texture, and maybe the line is actually in the clarinet. So all of these parts, there's a point actually which is really interesting where there is a duet. It's a dialogue, an imitative counterpoint between the clarinet and the piano, and that is really one section that needs to be looked after so that it can come through in all its cohesiveness and entirety. From a practical, technical point of view, the rests. In every concerto, you're going to find a lot of bars of rests at some point. So, depending on the situation, you have two options. You have few bars of rests, then you just show the downbeat. You mark the downbeat so that the orchestra can count how many bars of rest they have left before they start playing. But if you have more than, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 bars of rest, then you just mark the first bar. It's a longer period, so you mark the first bar, and during the rehearsal, you tell the orchestra at which point you're going to start conduct again. That is usually 1 or 2 bars before the orchestra comes back in. And to be even on the safer side, 2 bars before, you can put up your left hand and signal the orchestra that something is about to happen. They have to start back. You mark 1, 2 bars, or you conduct 1, 2 bars in silence, and then you take everybody down with you. So now let's see a few examples of concertos. I'm going to start with an excerpt from Chopin piano concerto, one of Chopin's piano concerto. Now this is from the Larghetto. In this case, look at this. You have a cascades of notes for the soloist in the right hand. You have the strings playing on the first and then changing on the third quarter, the first and second violins. Now, this is one really good example of when the conductor needs to follow the soloist. And the soloist needs to have total freedom. Often in this type of music, this type of passages, the pulse is suspended because there are so many notes to play that the soloist is automatically going to shift and so that it actually works for them. And you have, in this case, 2 options. One is, first option, you follow the harmonic changes, which in this case is very clear on the third beat of the bar. But if you find that too challenging, there is another trick, which is to follow the bass line. The soloist will always match the left hand with the right hand, so this is not an issue. If you follow the left hand, you will be pretty much safe all the time in this case, because it's much easier to follow than the right hand. Same goes for this example right here. It's exactly the same thing. You have the first two beats of the bar are actually quite simple, but then the third and the fourth is leggerissimo. There's tons of notes to play in there, and the soloist is going to stretch that musically, of course, but as much as they see fit. So in order to follow the left hand. That's much easier and much safer in this case than trying to catch the 32nd in in those third and fourth quarter. Another example comes from Mendelssohn violin concerto. This is another example where the conductor follows the soloist. This is actually easier in a way because Mendelssohn already wrote the cadenza and wrote the entrance of the orchestra connected to the cadenza. So what happens here usually is actually quite simple. The soloist does, see, there are 4 systems here. This is the entire cadenza of the violin concerto. The soloist does whatever he or she needs to do for the first 3 systems, and then usually on the 4th system they start slower and then they go faster. That is, if you wish, your signal. You can work out this is also part of the tradition, but you can work this out with the soloist ahead of time, of course, before the beginning of the rehearsal, if they do something different out of the ordinary. But what you need to do then is you beat and you signal the orchestra on the last beat of this, on the last bar, sorry, of this page, because in the next page you have the entrance of the orchestra on the third beat. So what you're going to have to do, you can, if you wish, you can lift up your hand on the beginning of the last system of this page, so the end, towards the end of the cadenza. You can mark bar 1, bar 2, and then you can start conducting on bar 3, on the last bar. This way you've established the tempo, everyone knows that they have to come in, and this is going to be very seamless and without any accidents. There's another case where the conductor follows the soloist. There are different cases where the soloist needs to follow the conductor. Let's see. I've chosen 3 excerpts from Beethoven piano concertos. This one, the first one, comes from the first piano concerto. Of course, you have the cadenza. This is actually another easy spot to catch. You have the entire cadenza of the soloist, but then Beethoven puts a rest with a hold at the end, and the orchestra comes in with the soloist on the following bar. So you can use the rest at the end of the cadenza. You can use the rest of the end of the cadenza to give your upbeat for the orchestra and for the soloist to come down at the same time. At this point you get da 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 da, rest, upbeat, down, everybody together. So here the soloist needs to follow the conductor. Same goes for the next example. The next example is another Beethoven concerto. However, this is a different type of situation. You see, you have the cadenza of the soloist, ends with a hold on G, and then the soloist starts by himself or herself. However, at this tempo, in this particular situation, there is no chance for the orchestra to come down on the second bar of the presto together with the soloist unless the conductor starts the soloist on the presto. Here is really, even if the soloist is the only one playing on the first bar of the presto, the conductor needs to give the upbeat to the soloist so that everyone can be together on the second bar. Otherwise there's not enough time, and the first beat of the second bar is not going to be together. This last example that we have for tonight comes again from another Beethoven's concerto. This is the 4th piano concerto. Now if you look at this, you have this little cadenza-like part, right? And then you have a trill on the D with the hold. Now here again the pianist plays only trills from the presto, but the orchestra, the strings specifically, need to come in at a very specific tempo. So orchestra and soloists need to follow the conductor in this case. By the way, connecting, just sort of make a connection to what we talked about last week. Last week we talked about visual score study. And for those of you who were not here, visual score study is a tool, is a way of looking at a score so that it gives you technical information right away without even before you go into the deep analysis or the details or anything. Now, if you look at this passage, visual score study will tell you quite a few things. First of all, that you need to give an upbeat to everyone on the press. That's the first thing. Otherwise, you already know that that you're not going to be together. Second, the dynamic is pianissimo. Third, you only have one section playing on the first beat, and finally the register in which they play the first violins is medium / towards, but let's say medium register. This means that your baton placement is clear just by looking at the score. Just by looking at this, you know that you can extend your left hand, or you can put your left hand in the middle, or your right hand, whatever. But let's say you want to divide it. You want to use the left hand for the first violins and the right hand for the right side of the stage. So you already know that your position is here. You know that given the register in which they play, it's more or less at waist to chest to eye level, so that you get that lightness from the sound. If you start conducting this part, holding your hands all the way down to your belly, you're gonna get a way too heavy sound. Help the players. If you conduct up here and you just, last thing that you see is the pianissimo, right? See a pianissimo, all you need to do is on the trill, wait, click and down, click and down. That's it. It's all. You can just do it from your wrist. It all comes from here, and it's going to be absolutely clear and perfect for everybody. Now, I want to go over another thing, which is what happens. What happens when something goes wrong? That happens. Soloists, as good as they are, as good as they may be, are not machines. They are human, just like every one of us, and they make mistakes. Sometimes they jump a bar, sometimes they jump a page, sometimes they jump a repeat, or they confuse a repeat with another one. This can happen when you have a lot of a piece with variation, for instance, and you have a lot of repeats of the same part every now and then, or a variated rondo. So there are a few scenarios. Of course, none of them are desirable, but you have to know them. You have to know what to do so that you can be prepared in case that happens. Now, in the first scenario, the soloist realizes that he or she is off, forgot something, whatever. So what they're going to do is going to look up to the podium. They're going to look up for help, because they realize that, of course, they need somebody to lead now and to get everything back in place. So at this point, what you can do, you can continue to beat patterns. In this case, don't break the patterns, beat clear patterns, so that the orchestra also will know. Of course, they will know if they know the piece that something is going wrong, but they'll keep playing. You keep beating pattern, and you can signal with your right hand, and with your left hand you can signal the soloist to when to come down. Try to make eye contact. This is very important. That's why you should always place yourself, the podium and the soloist, for instance, if it's a piano, which is a little more difficult, in a way that you can make eye contact and see the soloist when it's needed. Now, there's a second scenario. The soloist does not respond. Maybe they didn't realize that they skipped a beat, a page, a bar, whatever. It happens. At which point, you have to do something else. Stop beating patterns, because otherwise the orchestra will just keep going on the same track. Instead, just keep beating 1, 1, 1, 1. At the same time, you need to hold your left hand up. This is a signal for everybody who's looking that something is going wrong and needs to be fixed. So they'll try their best, because there's no orchestra. Everybody wants to succeed in a concert. Nobody is going to stop playing unless you ask them to. They'll keep trying to understand what it is that you're trying to signal them. And then what you have to do is you have to discreetly, if possible, call a rehearsal number or a rehearsal letter. And when you get to it, before you get to it, you say 2 before 1, 2 before letter B, 1 before letter B, beat, beat, beat. Letter B, 2 hands. Go down with 2 hands so that everybody understands that you're getting that's the arrival point that you want. Of course, the third and less desirable option is to stop the orchestra, stop everybody, call a letter, and regroup and restart from a designated point. This is what you absolutely don't want to do, but I mean, you've seen, I'm pretty sure everyone has seen at some point something like this happened. Maybe not directly to you, but maybe you witnessed it. It never happened to me personally, but point number two, it actually did happen to me. The soloist at one point. This was, I'll tell you the story because that's really interesting. This was during premiere of a new piece. This was almost 20 years ago. There was one part. The piece was fairly complicated, but it was well constructed and well written. There was one part at one point which that was repeating or was supposed to repeat itself. However, it was, I don't know, about 10-15 pages out of score, and the soloist just skipped. Instead of playing the second part, he went to the second. Instead of playing the first part, he went to the second part. He just skipped it completely without even realizing. He didn't realize it even until we told him after the show was over at the reception. So, I mean, luckily, first of all, it wasn't a symphonic ensemble. This was in a pit, mind you. This was with an opera. The soloist was a singer. Luckily, I had like really quick people in front of me. I called the rehearsal number, and then we went down and we caught him back where we were supposed to. But these things happen, so you really need to be prepared for whatever's going to happen on stage, because things are going to happen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, conducting soloists with instrumentalists is one thing. Soloist singers, is a slightly different things for a number of reasons. It's not quite the same. Now we'll talk about this in one of the next live sessions, because it's a whole different chapter. What I want to do now is I actually want to open up the chat and see if you have any questions on a particular piece or on what I've mentioned tonight in this brief chapter of how to conduct a soloist. I have the chat here, so let's see if anybody has any question on the subject. Or any doubts for that matter, something that maybe you have done that has happened to you in concert or in rehearsal, and you didn't really know how to deal with, or anything. Just let me know in the chat if there's something that you would like me to answer or to talk about. And otherwise, we will see each other again next week. I actually want to remind you of of a couple of things. First of all, I will put this video, will take a little bit to elaborate, but I will put it back online. It will be freely watchable until Sunday. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the group, or if you want, you can write me privately. You can get my contact from the Facebook group itself, or anywhere else on my website anyway, for that matter. All the live sessions that we've had in the past, and the future ones actually, will still be available on my Patreon page at patreon.com/conductingpills, where you have where you can actually see the live sessions, past live sessions, and also the bonus episodes of conducting pills. Oh, we have a comment. Let me read here. We have a comment from Jacob or Jacob. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Who is going to be a guest soloist with the orchestra and a budding conductor. Oh, well, I'm very glad you're a budding conductor, and I'm glad it was helpful for you. Best of luck. By the way, what are you going to play with the orchestra? Which piece? I'm actually curious to see which piece you're going to play. Concertino da Camera. Okay. Well, yeah, by that. That's a lovely piece, actually. It's also not that easy. It's not that easy to put together either. It requires quite a bit of sensitivity on the side of the conductor. Best of luck to you with this piece. I'm sure it will go wonderfully. And as I was saying, you can find all the other live sessions on my Patreon page, as well as the bonus episodes of Conducting Pills, where usually I take a piece and actually go a little bit deeper in its analysis and in its conducting part. If you have any questions about conducting or about anything else that revolves around conducting, just let me know. If you enjoyed this live session, please leave a comment in the group, and I will see you next time. Till then, bye bye. Have a nice evening or day, depending on where you are.